SLT Mobitel Fiber, the fiber of the nation. SLT Mobitel Fiber, the fiber of the nation.
රෝස සුවඳ තවත් තිකු කලක් රැඳෙන්න ඩබල් පර්ෆියුම් ලුක් සමගින් එන නව සන්ලයිට් රෝස්.
Tonight, give and take. The government and opposition trade barbs on national debt repayments as TNA MP offers a solution.
All that we ask for is for us to enjoy the same privileges that everybody else does. Imagine the amount of money that we can bring if we work together. As the TNA, we are happy to help you. But first you need to solve this issue.
Other reasons. As Sapugaskan the closest for 50 days, the Energy Minister insists it has nothing to do with fuel supply.
We decided to stop importation of crude oil to facilitate importation of essential goods such as petrol, diesel, medicine.
More options. Sri Lanka's COVID-19 Technical Committee approves the Molnupiravir oral pill for local use.
We have to get the dossiers from them and we'll have to send it to the NMRA for their formal approval. Once they give the formal approval, we will proceed the
Better deal. The country's tea exporters call on the government to revise the Social Security Contribution tax.
With such taxes, the prices at the auction will start coming down and it will trickle down to the grower.
All that and much more coming up on First at 9. This Monday, the 15th of November, 2021.
Introducing New Hellmann's, the world's #1 mayonnaise brand now in Sri Lanka.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening, welcome to First at 9. I'm Mohammed Kekanai. Now then, Chief Opposition Whip Lakshman Kiriyala today urged the government to reach out to the international community to reschedule its debt to avoid default and claimed that the opposition is better placed to sort out the country's financial crisis. However, Leader of the House Dinesh Gunawardena placed the blame for the financial crisis on the previous government's handling of the economy and cited the central bank bond scam as a glaring example. These remarks came during the second day of the second reading debate on Budget 2022.
ඉතින් ඇත්ත වශයෙන්ම දැන් මේගොල්ලෝ අහනවා ගරු කතානායකතුමනි අපේ ප්‍රශ්නයක් අපි ආවත් කොහොමද රට පාලනය කරන්න කියලා. ඒකනේ නායකයෙ වන්නේ කොහොමද? ඩොලර් හොයන්නේ කොහොමද කියලා. අපි ඒකට උත්තරයක් දෙන්න. මම ආණ්ඩුව නම් ජාත්‍යන්තරත් එක්ක කතා කරලා මේ ණය ටික රීෂෙඩියුල් කරගන්න. එතකොට ගරු කතානායකතුමනි හුස්ම ගන්න ඉඩක් එනවා. $6 billion ගෙවන්න ඕන. පුළුවන් මම කියන්නේ ජාත්‍යන්තරත් එක්ක කතා කරන්න. අපිට පුළුවන් ඒක කරන්න. මොකද අපි ජාත්‍යන්තරත් එක්ක වැඩ කරන පක්ෂයක්. එක්සත් ජාතික පක්ෂයේ සමගි ජන බලවේගය බලන්න. අපේ ආණ්ඩුව ආයතරයි GSP සාඩි දුන්නා. අපිට ඩොලර් ප්‍රශ්නයක් තිබ්බද? මේගොල්ලන්ට ඩොලර් නේ රුපියල් සතවත් නේ.
සංවිධායක අපිට මතකයි එතුමා රට බාර දෙන්න අවස්ථාවේ අපේ ජයග්‍රහණයට එදා තිබුණු තත්ත්වය. 2019 අපට බාර දුන්නේ 2.2ක වැටුණු කඩාල දමන ලද ආර්ථිකයක්. 2021 කොවිඩ් තවමත් බාධා ඇති කරනවා අදත්. මේ කිසිවෙකුට කියන්න පුළුවන්ද මං කියපු සංඛ්‍යා ලේඛන අනුව ලෝක ආර්ථිකය වේගයෙන් වර්ධනය වෙමින් පවතිනවා කියලා නෑ. එක්සත් ජනපද ඇමරිකාවේ සුමාන දෙකක් නෑ. කොංග්‍රස් මණ්ඩලයට ගිහිල්ලා තමන්ගේ ණය සීමාවල් වැඩි කරන්න අවසර ගත්තා. මොකටද? ලෝකයේ පොසත්ම රට කියන එක්සත් ජනපද ඇමරිකාව. මේගොල්ලන් කතා කරනවා ඒගොල්ලන්ට පුළුවන්ලු ගිහිල්ලා සල්ලි අරන් එන්න. මේ වීලු කතා. ඒ නිසා නැති ප්‍රශ්න කෙරෙහි විශ්වාසය තබන්නේ ඇයි කරු කතානායකතුමනි? රට කඩා වැටෙන්න ඒගොල්ලන්ට ආණ්ඩුවක් ලැබෙයි කියලා හිතන් ඉන්නවා. This house remembers what you all were saying that we are going into a sovereign default. How many times you all have repeated this in the house? Why are you all behaving like this? The international crisis. All of us must protect our citizens, our country and our economy. Not look for other reasons to oppose. ඉතින් අවසානයේදී ගිය ආණ්ඩුව වැඩේ වරද්දගත්තේ මහ බැංකුවේ මහ හොරකමින්. මේකෙන් තමයි ගිය ආණ්ඩුව ආපු හැටිම වැඩේ වරද්ද. මගේ මිත්‍ර කිරියල්ලේ මන්ත්‍රීතුමාට ඒක මතක නැහැ. මහ බැංකුවට සිද්ධ වෙච්ච දේ. ඒක තමයි ආර්ථිකයේ කැළඹපු ලක් කරපු පසුගිය රජය සමග ශ්‍රී ලංකා මහ බැංකුවේ මහ වංචාවට මුල් වුණු perpetual treasuries නැමැති සමාගමට අයථා ලෙස මූල්‍ය වංචා සහගත උපයාගත් ඒ ප්‍රධාන හැම සතයක්ම යලි භාණ්ඩාගාරයට ලබා ගැනීමට අයවැය ලේඛනයේ ප්‍රකාශ
එතුමා කිව්වා පර්පචුවල් ට්‍රෙෂරිස් හොරසල්ද කියලා. හරි ඒක අපි පිළිගන්නවා. නමුත් මේ ආණ්ඩුව කොතරම් බංකොලොත්ද කිව්වොත් හොරසල්ලිත් ගත්තා අයවැය හිගේපීවත්. ලැජ්ජයි හොරසල්ලිත් ගත්තා.
කියපු දෙයට පර්පචුවල් ට්‍රෙෂරිස් පිළිගත්තා. ඔව් මේ පළවෙනි කටෙන් කියවුණා අපි පිළිගන්නවා මහා වංචාව කියලා. මහා වංචාකාරයෝ කොහොමද කතා කරන්නේ?
Meanwhile, TNA MP Shanakian Rasamanikam offered his own suggestion to sort out the government's debt crisis. The MP stated that if the government grabs the opportunity to use its two-thirds majority to bring a final solution to the issues of the Tamil people, the TNA would be happy to act on behalf of Sri Lanka and seek international funding to end the country's crisis.
In all honesty, all the senior ministers and senior politicians in this government are aware that the TNA's position is that we want to live in this country as Sri Lankans. In one country, undivided, indivisible country. We have said that. We have said that again and again and again. But you don't want us to live like that because that is what your politics depends on. You want to keep us divided. You don't want to work with us. You don't want the Sri Lankan Tamils to say that we are Sri Lankan, that we want to live together because your politics fully depends on that. The minute that you say, no, look, the TNA is not separatist political party, let's work with them, you are worried that you will lose your vote share. Honorable present Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa had two opportunities in the past. When he finished the war in 2009, he had his first opportunity to unite this country and solve this country's problems. Because at the end of the day, all these economic constraints come down to us because we have not addressed our national ethnic question. Then in 2010, he had two-thirds majority in parliament. He could have solved this problem. What did he do? He passed the 18th amendment and got more power to him. Now this is the third time. For the third time you have been given opportunity by the people of this country. You can solve this issue. Your name would be written in golden letters if you solve this issue. Right now you are seen as one of the most senior politicians in the Asian region. You could even win the Nobel Peace Prize. You know, why don't you do that? Why don't you solve this issue? All we are asking for you is to solve this issue. And think about it right now. We are lobbying for a political solution. We are lobbying for our rights. We are lobbying for the rights of our Tamil people. All that we ask is to be treated equally in this country. All that we ask for is for us to enjoy the same privileges that everybody else does. How hard is that? Imagine the amount of money that we can bring if we work together. As the TNA, we are happy to help you. But first you need to solve this issue. We can think about it right now. We go to most of the countries that speak to us about the human rights situation in the country, speak to us about the political solution that has been pending in this country. But imagine if you solve this issue, we will go on your behalf. We will go on behalf of this country and bring money into this country. You will not have a debt crisis. You will have foreign reserves that will surpass your needs. Do that.
Big 3.
Now then, the Sapugaskanda oil refinery will be closed for 50 days from today. After this was announced by the Minister of Energy, concerned public, fearing fuel shortage, raced to refueling stations. But the minister's message was very clear. The closure was brought about to put dollars into better use, and the country's fuel supply will not be impacted in any way by the move.
Sri Lanka's troubles in financing its essential imports had been the topic of speculation for some time, and chief among them is the fuel bill. On several occasions in recent months, concerned public queued at pumps draining the refueling stations. With this being the case, an announcement came today from Minister of Energy Udaya Gammanpila. It was the closure of the Sapugaskanda oil refinery operated by the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation for 50 days. The reason? To save dollars and redirect them towards importing more essential items.
We produce 37% furnace oil and naphtha and 19% aviation fuel and kerosene. We produce only 43% petrol and diesel, which are essential for day-to-day transportation. Because of the heavy rains prevailing these days, the Minister of Power has informed us that hydropower production is in excess of 50% and they don't intend to use furnace oil or naphtha for their power production. On the other hand, as you know, only long distance flights are bound to somehow pump fuel from Sri Lanka. Short distance flights can pump fuel from the other destination. Because of that, furnace oil and aviation fuel are not really essential in this current context. Therefore, these two fuel, naphtha, furnace oil, as well as aviation fuel, amount to 56% of our total production at the refinery. Therefore, we decided to stop importation of crude oil to facilitate importation of essential goods such as petrol, diesel, medicine, essential food items, as well as LPG. So presently, our oil refinery produce only 14% of our petrol demand and 29% of our diesel demand. Instead of producing those here by importation of crude oil, we have realized that importing that quantity also from other countries is prudent considering the present shortage of the foreign currency.
With forex on the low side, Minister Gammanpilla also explained what's being done to procure crude as the CPC has failed to find a supplier.
These days, we are negotiating with several countries for an oil importation facility. This is a huge amount. We may need around $4 billion to facilitate importation of the annual requirement of petroleum products. So this is a mammoth task. On the one hand, the amount is huge. On the other hand, our financial situation, when we say our, both the CPC as well as Sri Lankan government, financial situation is really bad. As a result, it has now become very difficult to find a facilitator for importation of oil. But we are working on it. We are confident that we may not want to close this refinery more than 50 days, maximum 50 days. Within those 50 days, we will be able to find a mean of importation of the crude oil.
The minister added that the country is no stranger to the temporary closure of the Sapugaskanda refinery. He noted that maintenance work is usually carried out at the facility once every 2 to 3 years by closing the facility for 35 days. Though it should be done every 2 years, the minister revealed that the work is only done every 3 years, taking into account the revenue loss caused by the closure. What's more, the energy minister pointed out to other incidents from the recent past when mismanagement of crude forced the closure of the refinery. With the news breaking about the Sapugaskanda refinery being put out of action for 50 days, concerned public once more took to the pumps. Massive queues formed at refueling stations. But the subject minister is adamant that there is no reason for panic buying.
මේ පිරිපාදු වසා දැමීම අපි රටට විශේෂ ප්‍රකාශයක් විතර මීට කලින් නොකිව්වේ ඒක අභ්‍යන්තර කාරණයක් රටේ තෙල් සැපීමට කිසිසේත්ම බල නොපාන තෙල් සංස්ථාවට පමණක් බලපාන අභ්‍යන්තර කාරණයක් නිසායි අපි ඒක රටට කිව්වේ නැත්තේ. මේ වන විටත් දින 40කට ප්‍රමාණවත් දැවි තෙල් අපි ගබඩා කරන් ඉන්නවා.
Now then, a revised set of guidelines were issued today by the Director General of Health Services that will come into effect from tomorrow until the end of the month. Under the new guidelines, tuition classes will be able to resume for the first time in many months from tomorrow for ordinary level and advanced level classes.
The Director General of Health Services issued a revised set of guidelines today which will go into effect from tomorrow and stay in place until the 30th of this month. Accordingly, official meetings conducted in person, previously limited to 25% of the usual capacity not exceeding 50 persons, was revised. Under the new guidelines, a maximum of 1/3 of the usual capacity of the room or hall not exceeding 150 are the new regulations that must be followed when conducting meetings in person. Further, private gatherings or parties must be carried out with a maximum of 1/3 of the usual capacity of the room or hall not exceeding 100 persons, while only a maximum of 10 persons are permitted in a house. However, outdoor private gatherings are not allowed. In addition, the number of people allowed to visit a funeral has been increased from 15 to 20. Meanwhile, exhibitions and conventions have been given the green light from the 1st of December with adequate preparations and precautions. Further, tuition classes can now be conducted at 50% of the usual capacity, but only for the GC, O-level and A-level classes.
Sri Lanka could well use the world's first pill developed to treat COVID-19 in the future, as the island's COVID Technical Committee approved it today. Now the relevant recommendations will be sent to the National Medicine Regulatory Authority for further action. Trials have found that molnupiravir reduces hospitalization and death among COVID patients by half.
By last evening, Sri Lanka had completely inoculated 13,665,555 people. 2,211,352 people were also awaiting the second dose administration. All this means that 62.3% of the island's total population is fully vaccinated, when the global consensus being that any country which vaccinates 70% of its population or beyond will be able to bring the pandemic situation under control. Though various restrictions which were in place were done away with, giving the country's economy a chance to recover, the threat of reverting back to stringent restrictions is getting close by the day. Irresponsible behavior amid increased social mixing has sent new cases rising. Once at around the 500 mark, the daily caseload now is around 700. What's more, the daily COVID deaths over the past weeks had been between 10 and 30. a cause for concern is that many of them are vaccinated. But as far as the Ministry of Health is concerned, there is a simple explanation.
This is an obvious situation that will come into place when a larger proportion of the population is fully vaccinated. I will go into one extreme example where 100% of the population is fully vaccinated. Everyone who are dying of COVID-19, they will be found to be vaccinated. So 100% of the deaths will be fully vaccinated people. In the same way, when the larger number of population is fully vaccinated, a higher proportion of deaths will be there among those who are fully vaccinated. However, we have seen a relatively low number of deaths compared to the number of cases reported in Sri Lanka. Because of the vaccination, many deaths have been prevented. However, the final number of deaths will be determined by the number of cases present in the population, whereby if the number of cases are very high, the likelihood of getting the disease into the vulnerable populations, like those who are having comorbidities or those who are in the extremes of age, who are more vulnerable, will be very high, and therefore they are more likely to get the disease, and there will be a considerable high proportion of deaths among them. So to prevent this, what we can do is to reduce the new cases or the disease among the population.
In addition to the standard vaccine dose administrations, Sri Lankan health authorities are also rolling out booster doses to all frontline workers. So far, 112,991 of them received the booster.
The technical committee meeting, they have approved it, and now we have to get the dossiers from them, and we have to send it to the NMRA for their formal approval. Once they give the formal approval, we will proceed the stuff.
In the meantime, the Sri Lankan health authorities announced today that the world's first oral COVID treatment, Molnupiravir, a pill, has been approved by Sri Lanka's COVID-19 Technical Committee. Clinical trials have proven that the capsule Molnupiravir has been able to reduce hospitalizations and deaths by half. The UK became the first country to approve the pill on the 4th of this month.
Now we have already started giving the booster dose for the health sector as well as the frontline workers, and it is right now it is rolling out, and most probably the 6th year will be starting this week. We are giving the booster after completing either 3 months or the 6 months after according to the type of the vaccine. According to the calendar, we will be rolling out to the other age group also. First we are giving 60 and above, then we are giving from 30 and above the people who are with immunocompromised diseases, and then comorbidities, likewise we are coming down.
We will see you shortly after this break. Stay with us.
මිලියන 18.8 නිවස ලක්ෂ 5ක් ගෙවා දැන්ම වෙන් කරවා ගන්න මල්බෙරි රෙසිඩන්ස්.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, the police today sought court orders preventing a planned mass protest by the Samagi Janabalavege tomorrow. Several courts have issued orders preventing protests in their jurisdictional areas. However, the Colombo Chief Magistrates Court rejected the police request, citing a lack of evidence that the protest was planned to be held in the area of Keselwatta. However, speaking at a media briefing today, members of the Samagi Janabalavege said that their protest will continue at any cost.
The mass protest organised by the Samagi Janabalavege is set to work off tomorrow in Colombo. According to police, the protest is said to be held in the area of Keselwatta. With that being the case, the police stations of Keselwatta, Fosho and Barber Street, however, sought an order from the Colombo Chief Magistrate which orders the SJB to follow the health guidelines by the Director General of Health Services during the protest. However, the magistrate said that there is no evidence to previous protests leading to a rise in the number of COVID-19 cases in the country. He also outlined that there is no evidence of said protests being planned to be held within the jurisdiction of the Keselwatta police. What's more, the magistrate said that the health guidelines issued by the Director General of Health Services has not specified the number or percentage of people allowed to attend public meetings. The Colombo Chief Magistrate therefore rejected the request made by the police. He, however, noted that the police can take legal action against flouting of quarantine rules and regulations. In the meantime, the police also sought orders against the planned holdings of SJB protests in the judicial jurisdictions of Colombo Fort, Maliga Kanda, Gangodawila, Muthugama and Kalutara. Those requests were also rejected by the relevant courts. However, orders were issued against the holding of SJB protests in the judicial jurisdiction areas of Halsdorp, number 5, 1 and 2 of Mahara, Kaduwela, Homagama, Horana and Valisara by the relevant courts.
අද ගොවිය අනාතයි ලබන අවුරුද්දේ මේ රටේ සාගතයක් එනවා බඩු මිල අහස උස නැගලා ජනතාවට ජීවත් වෙන්න බැරි තත්යකට පත් වෙලා මේ රජය කරලා තියෙන විනාශයට විරුද්ධව අපි විශාල උද්ඝෝෂණ ව්‍යාපාරයක් හෙට පවත්වනවා අපි කරන්න පටන් ගත්ත වැඩේ කරන්න අවශ්‍ය කටයුතු කරනවා
ඊයේ පෙරේද නෙළුම් පොකුණට ගෙනල්ලා ඔක්කොම සංවත්සරේ පැවැත්වුවේ පක්ෂේ ඒවැයි කොරෝනා පැතිරෙන්නේ නැද්ද?
However, the ruling party had this to say pertaining to the planned protests of the opposition.
කොවිඩ් රෝගීන් ප්‍රමාණය වැඩි වෙනකොට මරණ සංඛ්‍යාව ඉහළ යනකොට ආණ්ඩුවට සිද්ධ වෙනවා රට වහන්න. රට වහපු ගමන් රටේ ආර්ථිකය කඩාගෙන වැටෙනවා මිනිස්සු කන්න නැහැ කියලා පාරට බහිනවා. මෙන්න මේක තමයි සජිත් ප්‍රේමදාස සුළු සමගි ජනබලවේගයේ විපක්ෂයට තියෙන දේශපාලන උවමනාව.
In the meantime, Minister of Health Kelia Rambukwella was quizzed today whether the constitutional rights of the people trump the health rights.
It is not a question of suppressing the constitutional provisions. The constitutional provisions also provides us various mechanisms to carry out in accordance with the constitution, but there are certain gazette notifications and then also there are implementation norms, there are also rules and regulations that can be brought in. So we have an arm, Health Ministry, where by way of a gazette we can notify and then that will be taken up at any court of law, because if you remember some time ago when the teachers' agitation came, but some other, I said at the MC, they made certain comments saying that there was no provision by the gazette, also that has not been provided to cancel it by a gazette. So that was the expression made by the courts at that point in time. So that's where it stands.
From a health perspective, experts are of the view that any form of mass gatherings is imprudent.
විරෝධතා පිළිබඳව ජනතාවට තමන්ගේ අදහස් ප්‍රකාශ කිරීමේ අයිතියට ඔන්දේසි විරහිතව ගරු කරනවා. නමුත් ඒ කරන ක්‍රියාවලිය හරහා කොවිඩ් වෙන්න පුළුවන් වෙනත් රෝගයක් පැතිරීමට ඉඩ දුන්නොත් ඒ පැතිරීම හරහා අපේ අහිංසක ජීවිතවලට බලපෑමක් ඇති වෙනවා නම් ඒක අනුමත කරන්න බෑ.
We will see you shortly. Bear with us. Welcome back. This is First at 9. Now, following the introduction of a social security tax of 2.5% in the budget by Finance Minister Basil Rajpaksha, the country's tea exporters are calling for this to be revised. Chairman of the Tea Exporters Association of Sri Lanka, Sanjay Herath, explained that such a tax has the potential to make Sri Lanka's Ceylon tea less competitive in the international market.
The proposed 2.5% social security contribution tax on companies of turnover more than 120 million rupees is detrimental to the tea industry. As we know, the tea industry is very heavily taxed, and with such taxes, we will be uncompetitive in the international market. We are already about $1 more than the rest of the competition in the world. And unfortunately, with such taxes, we will have to charge it to our selling price. The prices at the auction will start coming down and it will trickle down to the grower, and ultimately the poor farmer will be the unfortunate recipient of this tax. So we earnestly appeal to the government to reconsider this tax, at least for the export industry. If we are talking about the export-driven economy, we were looking at the government to try and give us a helping hand to bring the much needed foreign exchange to this country. But with such taxes, it is really detrimental, and we would urge the government to reconsider this tax.
September export earnings grew by 3.1% to surpass $1 billion compared to the same period last year. With that, cumulative export earnings also increased by 20% in the January to September 2021 period, amounting to $8.934 billion compared to $7.445 billion in the corresponding period in 2020.
The deficit in the trade account narrowed to $495 million in September 2021 compared to the deficit of $525 million recorded in September 2020 and $586 million recorded in August 2021. However, the cumulative deficit in the trade account widened from January to September 2021 to $6.003 billion from $4.337 billion in the corresponding period last year. Meanwhile, terms of trade deteriorated by 15.6% in September 2021 2021 year-on-year, as the increase in import prices surpassed the increase in export prices. Further, earnings from exports in September 2021 grew by 3.1% over September 2020 to reach $1.031 billion. In the meantime, cumulative export earnings, which increased by 20% from January to September 2021, amounted to $8.934 billion compared to $7.445 billion in the corresponding period in 2020. Total earnings from the export of agricultural goods in September, meanwhile, decreased by 0.6% year-on-year, mainly due to the decrease in export earnings from tea, unmanufactured tobacco, spices and vegetables. However, earnings from tea exports decreased by 8.7% year-on-year due to 5.8% lower export prices, as well as a 3% decline in export volumes. Further, expenditure on merchandise imports in September 2021 amounted to $1.526 billion, around the same level recorded in September 2020. On a cumulative basis, total import expenditure from January to September 2021 amounted to $14.938 billion compared to $11.782 billion recorded in the corresponding period in 2020.
Sri Lanka stocks closed at an all-new high today, recovering from an initial plunge experienced due to panic selling in the financial sector shares over budget announcements. The Colombo benchmark all-share price index closed 86.28 points higher at 10,752.37, while the S&P SL20 index of more liquid stocks fell 17.57 points to close at 3,598.38. Now here's Dimantha Mathi with a brief report on today's market performance.
Following the budget announcement, today at the start of the day, we saw a significant sell-off in the market, with the index being down by around 300 points amidst the large number of taxes that were imposed from the budget. However, the selling pressure was short-lived and quickly the market started to recover. However, if you look at the midday, the market managed to fully recover and gain by around 70 to 80 points. However, after that, then again we saw a bit of a selling pressure in the market and the market erased all the gains. So there was a lot of volatility in the index throughout the day.
And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.